is the Rivuelto, the successor to the Aventador and the Murcielago, Diablo, Countach and Miura before that. There was of course the limited run Xi'an back in 2021 with its fancy supercapacitor, but this is the first series production electrically assisted Lambo.
Which means there's quite a big question hanging over this car's head. Is a plug-in hybrid Lamborghini a proper Lamborghini? There's your answer. And by the way, that's a big fat yes. Woohoo! Come on!
We've already shot a walk around video of this car, link above, which contains all the technical details you need and a fair few you don't, so I won't drown you in numbers, but let's recap on the headlines. A tiddly 3.8 kWh battery lets you drive in pure EV mode for around 6 to 8 miles, but call on the full force of 2 electric motors on the front axle, a third nestled between the engine and gearbox, and the 6.5 litre naturally aspirated V12, and you have 1001 brake horsepower at your disposal. Enough for 0 to 62 miles an hour in 2.5 seconds, 0 to 124 in 7, a top speed of over 218 miles an hour, and a hefty price tag of £450,000 before options. Hypercar numbers then for a high-end supercar price.
Let's start with the engine. Where else? It's the lightest and most powerful V12 that Lamborghini has ever made. 17 kilograms lighter than the one you got in the Aventador, and on its own it produces 814 brake horsepower and 534 pounds-feet of torque and revs to 9,500 RPM, but that's just the engine. You've then got the electric motors that chime in with 187 horsepower, so it doesn't thrust out of the corners on e-power in quite the same way as you get with the Porsche 918 Spider, say, but it does torque fill beautifully and really jets you down the straight before the V12 takes over and does its thing. And let's be honest, when you've got an engine as special as this, as vocal as this, you don't want to smother it in electricity. The e-motors never do anything other than play second fiddle to the star of the show. And then there's the part that makes the really big difference, the gearbox. So gone is that horrible old ISR single clutch gearbox you got on the Aventador, replaced with a proper all-new 8-speed twin clutch gearbox, and surprise, surprise, it works fantastically. You can ping down the gears and up the gears and it doesn't get in your way. You don't have to drive around it. About bloody time!
The lithium-ion battery, which can be charged from a 7 kWh plug in just 30 minutes or via regen from all 3 motors and the engine in just 6 minutes, is mounted down the spine of the car. So to accommodate it, the V12 had to be rotated through 180 degrees and the gearbox mounted at the back, transversely. It's both lighter and faster than the 7-speed transmission in the Huracan and has an extra gear because reverse is taken care of by the rear e-motor. All this rearrangement means occupants now have 84mm more cabin length to play with, more headroom and a decent sized frunk, making this a far more practical car than the Ferrari SF90.
Okay, so let's talk about the handling. Let's face it, the Aventador was dripping in character, but was a little bit crude. It was a force of nature, but never really very fleet of foot. This changes everything. So the Aventador was pretty tricky on the limit. This, way more controllable and capable, and that's despite the fact that this steering rack is 10% faster. So let's just describe what happens in the corners. You squeeze the throttle and straight away you can feel the e-power on the front axle pulling you out of the corner, trimming your line, deleting any understeer and then whooshing you down the straight. But really, you're just biding time until that hulking great V12 takes over. I tell you what, there's a refinement to this car that I just haven't seen before from a Lamborghini. There's smoothness to the suspension, all the components work together harmoniously. It's the closest Lamborghini have got to matching Ferrari's dynamics. I must admit the steering might be a little bit too light for some. I quite like the fact that it has this sort of over-caffeinated feel to the steering rack, but top marks to Lamborghini for making a steering wheel that is actually almost round in 2023. And the layout here is really logical. You've got your driving modes up here, you've got your powertrain EV modes here, you can adjust your wing here, and your nose lift is over here. We're not going to be needing that on track. And then we get to the brakes. So normally with electric cars and hybrid cars that use regen, well, there's a bit of a problem because there's a point where your initial deceleration is from the regen, and then you get physical calipers on discs, and that handover point is quite tricky to manage. And I have to say, well, I haven't noticed the handover so far. Lamborghini's done a fantastic job. Having said that, we are driving flat out, using the brakes very hard on a racetrack. It could be a different story on the road.
The Revuelto is built around a mono fuselage, a carbon tub that's 10% lighter than the Aventador's, yet 25% stiffer. For packaging reasons, gone is the beautiful pushrod suspension from the Aventador, replaced with dual wishbones, upright spring mounts and adjustable dampers. Brakes are carbon ceramic with 10 piston front calipers grabbing 410mm discs and 4 piston rear calipers on 390mm discs. Plus, there's regenerative braking, rear wheel steering and torque vectoring on top. The aero improvements include an active rear wing, with the headlines being a 61% improvement in drag efficiency over the Aventador and 70% more downforce.
Oh, it just feels stable. Come on, I mean, a lot of the romance in these big Lamborghinis is wrapped up in the fact that they're supposed to be brutish and piggish to drive, but when you have one that has all the touch points, all the noise, all the glorious emotion of a big Italian supercar like this, but actually behaves itself well, you can forget all those old rose-tinted notions. This is what you want. Here we go, double apex, up to third, a little bit wide. Put the cones back, I may have knocked them off. Sorry! Right, so what about this interior? What can I tell you? Well, let's start with the seats, because normally Lamborghini seats are completely tortuous. These ones aren't quite so bad. They're quite squishy in the middle, they're quite wide, they're not too heavily bolstered. These are the electrically operated comfort seats. By the way, you can get sportier versions, which I'm sure will destroy your lower back. The materials, so in here we got carbon fiber, Alcantara, leather. It does appear to have gone up a fairly hefty step from the Aventador. Clearly, Lamborghini has realised if you're going to charge people £450,000 before options, then the materials and build quality needs to be up to spec. And the other thing they've realised is that in the Aventador, you basically didn't have space to put a biscuit in the interior, but here they've made a big effort to put lots of cubbies and useful storage areas. Boring, I know, but bear with me. So under this floating screen, you've got a space here, you've got more rubberized mats and storage space over here. You've got optional cup holders. This car doesn't actually have it, but you can get them in front of the passenger over there. And most exciting of all is the fact that if you move these seats forward a bit, apparently you can fit an entire golf bag on this shelf behind me, which excites me probably more than it should. But the thing about this car is it still feels like a proper Lamborghini. There's a little bit more space in here, but you've got this enormous windscreen that spears away from you into the distance to some sort of infinity point over there, and the rear visibility, if I look through this mirror, is mainly engine with just a sort of little sliver of light coming through. So standard Lamborghini. I should mention these screens that are in front of us. You've got 3 of them now in the Revuelto, a big instrument screen behind there, an infotainment screen in the middle of the dash, and another slim one for the passenger to stare at, react quickly to your inputs. The graphics look fantastic. The really clever bit, I'm told, is that you can take information from this central screen and swipe it left into your instrument display or swipe it right into the passenger display. Not sure how useful that is, haven't figured out how it works yet, but sounds very cool, doesn't it? Now, admittedly, we haven't actually driven the Revuelto on a road yet, and those massive steamroller tyres and those huge wheels, you've got 21-inch wheels at the front, 22-inch wheels at the back, they're not going to come without compromise on a broken, cracked British B road. But, and this is a big claim and you need to whisper it, because I think this could be a hairy-chested, mid-engined V12 Lamborghini that you could possibly, maybe, if you're feeling brave, drive every single day to Tesco's, to the shops, take the kids, well, the kid, to school in it. Sensible stuff. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing, I've forgotten where I am. I'm at a racetrack. I need to get back on it. This is supposed to be a big scary Lamborghini, what's going on? I should be somewhere over the fence in the bushes over there with my tail between my legs, but it's looking after me. Hard on the brakes, turn in, take liberties, use all the power. Oh, this is a different.
And can you believe we've got this far without talking about the way it looks?
To be fair, very, very low, very, very wide, and has a very, very angry face. My personal favourite bits, though, are all the exposed V12 engine surrounded by vents. You've got the movable rear wing and those Lamborghini, but as we all know, this is merely the Revuelto's opening gambit. It's a car that's going to be on sale for the next 10, 11, even 12. It's going to sprout wings, who knows? We might even one day see a jacked up Cerato version of the Revuelto. Now there's an idea. The story here isn't that Lamborghini has just designed the most bonkers looking car possible, plumbed in the loudest and most powerful engine and then shrugged. A genuinely handsome supercar, proper polish and handling. It doesn't need to kill the good time vibes. It can actually enhance them.